So picking up on that idea that we've just been talking about in the previous video about freedom and the idea of whether or not characters are actually naive about the challenges that are going to face them, we'll address this essay question here. And it's a bit hard to read, but we'll just have a look at it. It's actually solitude can be dangerous. How is this idea explored in these two texts? So let's have a go at a body paragraph. Okay, so hopefully that's not too hard to read. I might just go through this, and the bell will go while I go through this, so just warning you. I'll go through this as slowly as I can so that if it's hard to read, you're able to follow along with what I'm saying. Okay, so solitude can be dangerous. How is this idea explored in these two texts? Okay, as both characters seek to gain independence and a deeper sense of self-actualization. Remember here, I'm picking up on these major ideas, concepts, the concepts of independence and the concepts of self-actualization and freedom. They inevitably face greater challenges than they initially expected. So there's an idea being raised here. And also notice that I'm not using any of the words in the essay topic there. Okay, I'm trying to pick up on here. What I have picked up on is this idea of challenges instead of dangerous. So challenges instead of dangerous. Okay? For Charlie, his journey leads him to an existential sense of isolation. Isolation, using that word, instead of solitude. As he makes choices regarding how he will achieve a sense of ownership over his life, he's driven deeper into hopelessness. Now this is an idea of this is what is dangerous. Okay? Hopelessness, dangerous, and grief. After he's returned from living the old way and he's failed attempt to integrate with the long grasses, Charlie's experiences in jail solidify the dangers of his choices to separate himself from both mainstream culture and traditional Indigenous culture. And here's the quote. His ultimate solitude within jail leads him to conclude that he might as well live the whitefellow way, thus completely abandoning his cultural origins. So see what the danger of solitude here is that he abandons mainstream white culture and he abandons Indigenous culture. And here's the red bit, our comparative. As Charlie finds himself incarcerated, Robin's struggles consist of her inability to separate herself from others. As Robin embarks on her journey, she realises that the challenge of isolation and physical exhaustion takes a toll on her mental capacity to survive in isolation. So she's realising that she can't actually survive in isolation like she wanted to. However, she continually fights against her need for others, perhaps to her own detriment. Davidson characterises, notice here we've got here a how, okay? A how. She characterises Rick as a creature that she becomes hopelessly entangled with. Hopelessly entangled with. Okay? So using sort of a paired double quote there. And this becomes a source of unrest for her as it disrupts her need for total isolation. Although she maintains a tenacity to remain alone, her journey becomes more and more complex as she begins to realise the dangers that she is entering into. Okay, and then we go back to Charlie's Country now. We've done our A and B, now we're switching back. In a similar way, comparative language. Charlie must discover that his choices to isolate himself only intensify the need that he has for others. And then we go back to Tracks, another comparative language. While Robin begins to experience the need for meaningful human connection, Charlie must also accept that he requires the companionship of his peers. So notice here we kind of jump between texts there. This can be exemplified in the scene that contains both Black Pete and Charlie in jail. Black Pete's comment that it's hard to talk to you when you don't look like you. Here's a quote. Now I did have to change colour here because my purple one was running out of ink. So the colour change there is just because I was out of purple. It demonstrates that Charlie's isolation can alienate him from his friends. And then we've got our new insight, the last sentence. As both characters aim to separate themselves from others, they realise that it is naive to assume that any kind of self-actualisation is impossible without the influence of others. So I think what we try to pick up here is that the danger of solitude is the fact that they try to choose to separate themselves from others. They realise that they actually do need others and they can't avoid others as they go through. I'll just step back again so that perhaps if you wanted to pause that so that you can copy it down, you can.